Hello everyone, my name is Serv, and today we need to talk about Black Mage. Now, as you are surely aware, Black Mage somewhat recently received a very significant rework, taking much of what Black Mage is known for and what its player base has come to love and removing all of it. Now, this has obviously been a very divisive rework amongst the community, and I've actually held off a couple weeks to make this so I could properly gauge public perception before I went out and talked about what the rework has actually done. And so now, with all that having been done, and Black Mage being one of my favorite jobs, it's time to discuss the Black Mage rework. Now, I myself have been playing Black Mage since I started playing the game, actually, which would have been about 7 years ago. Black Mage has been my favorite DPS for a very, very, very long time, and if it weren't for Black Mage back in 4.0, I don't think I would have fallen in love with 14 the way that I did and continued to play it for as long as I have. During some of the longer and more grueling content droughts that 14 is unfortunately very, very well accustomed to, oftentimes, Black Mage was the thing that kept me engaged in the game, that gave me something to do, something to keep me entertained during those long periods. And unfortunately for me, and for many other people who share my sentiment, Black Mage is no longer what it used to be. It, quite literally, from a game design perspective, has lost its entire identity. Everything that made Black Mage what it is no longer a part of Black Mage now, which does sound unfortunate, but here's the thing. I talked about this a bit in a previous video of mine, in that Square Enix likes to take a job, remove all of the things that made players grow fond of that job in the first place, and then release it, effectively like a neutered version of what it used to be. But the benefit here is that while the dedicated player base has been, for lack of a better term, spit on, new people who didn't necessarily enjoy that job now have a chance to. And this is exactly what has happened with Black Mage. And as a result, Black Mage has become a very controversial point of conversation, whether it be on the 14 Reddit, Twitter, or even in-game. And I, as a very large fan of old Black Mage, I'm here to say today, very confidently, that this rework is objectively good. It's not perfect by any means, but Black Mage undoubtedly is better off this way than it would have been before. But of course, if I am to call it objectively good, that means that I have to be scoring it off of some kind of metric that is free from opinion. And that is exactly what has pushed me to make this video. So, if you aren't aware, for many, 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 many years, basically 14's entire lifespan, almost, Black Mage, has been the least played job in the game, or at least within like the bottom 3 or 4 jobs. Black Mage is rarely ever a commonly played job. It's a very well beloved and very iconic job, but due to its niche playstyle, it's not very well loved. And there are a number of reasons for this, such as 14's absolutely massive filter. You see, in order to get into Final Fantasy XIV and partake of the endgame raid scene, you need to complete over 1,000 main story quests. And no, that is not a joke or an exaggeration. The word count of the main story currently is more than, I can't recall if it's more than 2 or 3 times the length of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's copiously, laughably, stupidly long. And, I mean, I enjoy, with the exception of 7.0, 14's entire story. But, in spite of that, there is one massive problem with this incredibly long barrier to entry, and that is how it pushes away players who might be invested in the game solely for its raid content. You see, if someone is thinking, I want to go and engage in this game specifically for its high-level mechanics, its endgame raid scene, they're going to look at the game and think, oh, I also need to do 400 hours worth of story to unlock the raid scene that may or may not be good. As a result, many people who are interested solely in the high-end, for lack of a better term, sweaty side of MMO endgame are likely to look somewhere else, because getting into 14 just for the gameplay is a pretty massive investment. You're sinking so much time into something you might not even enjoy. After all, 14's Duty Finder content and its high-end content are night and day. There's very little similarity in the experiences you'll get there. So you're effectively going in and hoping that you enjoy a game with no idea as to whether or not it's actually for you. This is a pretty sizable problem when one of your most iconic jobs is designed exclusively for the crowd that is not likely to actually make it through and try it. You see, Black Mage, and White Mage for that matter, are two of the most iconic designs in Final Fantasy as an IP. I just recently, while I was making the script for this video, was at the mall. I stopped into a GameStop, and sure enough, there was pixel art Black Mage and White Mage lanterns that were going for like $40 a pop, and in spite of that, they were almost sold out. And that's not a very big mall. Arguably, Black Mage and White Mage are right up alongside Moogles and Chocobo as far as mascot status for Final Fantasy. So, when the idea of a Final Fantasy MMO is brought up to somebody who's never heard of it before, there's a very high chance that they might think to themselves, oh, I'd love to go in and play my favorite, beloved, iconic character slash job, Black Mage slash Vivi. And then they get in and they try the job, and it's ironically the most niche player base, or it has the most niche player base in the game. This is very likely to turn them off from either the job or the game as a whole if the loop just simply doesn't stick for them. As a result, I begrudgingly am willing to concede that perhaps Black Mage is deserving of becoming a more beginner-friendly job. I mean, on top of that, it is also a job immediately available to all players, seeing as it is a level 1 class at first. So, maybe there's actually some truth to this. So, naturally, when I heard that Black Mage was actually going to get completely dumbed down and simplified, while I was rather dismayed at the fact that I was going to have to ditch my favorite DPS, or at least probably would. 14 and job reworks is a very controversial topic after all. I'm a Dark Knight slash Astro main, so you can imagine I've been burned before. Now, the way that I gauged how successful the Black Mage rework was via an evil, cursed, evil, terrible, evil website called FFLogs. I did not look at damage at all, because when we're talking about a job rework like this, we're looking at a complete overhaul to gameplay. It does not matter even a little bit how much damage the job does. It's about how much fun it is to play, how much people enjoy it. So I went through and I looked at all different types of content, both high-end and low-end, to ensure I was getting the Duty Finder casuals who, for some reason, had logs uploaded to that website. And you'll find that Black Mage, from basically its entire existence, has always kind of sat around the lower rungs. It's one of the less played jobs, as I've been ranting on about, but after the 7.2 rework, Black Mage actually shot up to the top 3 most played DPS in the game. Now, it's nowhere near the likes of Dancer, which for some reason is like one of the most played jobs in the whole game. I'm not sure why. But it still is in the running. It's actually managed to completely reverse its placement as far as popularity amongst the player base goes. And for a job as iconic and beloved as the Black Mage, something that new players are going to be familiar with before even trying out Final Fantasy, this is a very good thing. And clearly, more people are liking it than are not, seeing as the job is suddenly being beloved by many, many people. And just recently, I was looking at the 14 subreddit, unfortunately, and there's quite a number of posts showing up, kind of out of nowhere. At first, these were all meme posts, but now it's people genuinely, unironically saying, hey, the Black Mage rework made me fall in love with the job. And while even though I'm making this video, I do confess that hearing someone say that does make me feel kind of nauseous. It is undeniably a good thing for the job, it's a good thing for the game. The caster role right now, however, is a fucking mess. It's better than it was as of 7.2, but it's kind of been the worst balanced role throughout Dawntrail as a whole. I'm not sure if any other role is as much of a dumpster fire as the casters have been. What with Pictomancer coming in and invalidating everything that isn't Red Mage, and Summoner existing and being forgotten about. Black Mage originally had no purpose to exist. Now after the rework, it does. It's now the highest damage caster. It's almost the highest damage job in the game, and in certain fights, it actually is the best option you have, especially older ultimates. And where Black Mage offers you higher damage, Pictomancer now serves a actual purpose. Rather than outclassing the Black Mage, it now serves as a slightly lower damage but higher party utility option. And it's also a little bit more difficult now, which is kind of ironic, but I also kind of like that. So, Black Mage has sort of been restored. Its place in the game's ecosystem, I suppose, as far as balance goes, has been moved to a more comfortable and rewarding spot. Meanwhile, its approachability and how much it appeals to the largest percentage of the player base has been massively increased, what with people who are coming in here to enjoy the massively long story, who are not necessarily likely to want an overly complicated niche job. And then, of course, we can look at the other two casters, Summoner and Pictomancer. Pictomancer, first of all, you might see in some of the backing footage I'm using, I don't have any footage of Black Mage. I went in to get some, but I was bored and forgot to record it anyways. Pictomancer, after receiving its nerfs, has actually become deceptively engaging. They've added some more depth to it by virtue of its nerfs. Now, Summoner is something of a problem child, though. And Summoner is actually the whole reason I'm bringing this up. I mean, yes, if you are a sad Black Mage player who feels they have lost their main, I recommend you try out Picto. I recommend you go look up high-level Picto strats. There's actually some things that might appeal to you. But moving back to Summoner, does not do more damage than any other caster. It is the absolute lowest damage of the casters. Its utility is worse than Red Mage in every way. Its damage is worse than Red Mage in every way. Its job identity is the most shallow out of everything. Nothing about Summoner feels like a Summoner. We're augmenting our own... not even combo, we're augmenting a button that we mash. And then we get one unique ability that alternates throughout our rotation. But it doesn't alternate very meaningfully because every time all we do is mash the button. The only one that really has you think is the Ifrit one, and that's just a matter of making sure you don't kill yourself going in for the melee hit. There's just nothing to Summoner. And while Red Mage does completely obliterate Summoner as far as just a straight meta comparison, it does more damage. Red Mage, of course, also has infinite resurrections, as long as you have MP, whereas Summoner's resurrection is no better than that of a healer's. And then Summoner's ability to support the party outside of resurrection is worse than Pictomancer's, who already absolutely wipes the floor with it in damage. Summoner, at the moment, I believe is the single worst job in the game by every single conceivable metric, and that is even considering the fact that Machinist unfortunately exists. And so, with Black Mage having been absolutely gutted, left with nothing of its former identity anymore, unless you like standing in ley lines, I suppose, even though you can move them now, I would like to present the idea that perhaps we should be accepting of Black Mage's new beginner-friendly and widely appealing identity, but perhaps push for Summoner to regain its former identity. If you are a newer player, let's say you started playing within the last 4 to 5 years, I think, you might not be aware of what Summoner used to be. Summoner previously was the hardest job in the game. It was I suppose there were some arguments, but it was largely considered to be more difficult than Black Mage. It had an absolutely ridiculously long and complex rotation. It kept the mind going, regardless of whether you were doing high-end content or low-end content, unless you were, I guess, a sweaty Summoner one-trick and the whole thing was muscle memory, but you get the point. It was a hard, engaging job, and as a result of how many things it had going on, it has a very distinct identity, or had, past tense. That has been completely removed, and it now has nothing more than the Lego Duplo rotation. It's fucking sad. It really, really disappoints me what's happened to Summoner. I used to love Summoner as well back in Stormblood. Kind of fell off of it in Shadowbringers, but still, I loved it back then. And I would be so happy to see if this spot that has opened up for a actually difficult job, not just like in the caster role, but in 14 as a whole. I feel like there really aren't many difficult jobs anymore at all. Red Mage is now vying for one of the most complex jobs, and during the time that Summoner was at its prime, during 4.0 when Summoner was a real job, Red Mage was actually the single easiest job in the game. That was like the go-to for beginners. And nowadays, Red Mage is one of the hardest, the most complex, the most deep. And all it had to do to accomplish this was be one of the only jobs in the game to never receive a rework. That's some interesting perspective, no? The easiest job of yesteryear, brought to the current day, is one of the hardest jobs of today. That's so strange, but that's more of a side tangent than anything else. The point is, I think Summoner should take up the niche that Black Mage used to have. Summoner does not have the same sort of iconic design or name as Black Mage does. It is a beginner job, but a beginner job with some challenge is, I would argue, a good thing to have. And on top of this, it also is tied to Scholar. If you level Summoner and you do not enjoy it, you didn't waste your time. If you spend all this time and find out, oh, Summoner's too hard, I don't like it, well, you have a very enjoyable healer now, as well. So, that's my 2 cents on the Summoner matter, and I hope it makes sense how I've tried to tie this into the Black Mage ordeal. So, let me know what you think in the comments below. One thing I would really love to hear, and I realize this is a Black Mage video, and the end of it's really just Summoner, 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 but I really want to know if you could change Summoner in any way, especially if you were an old Summoner player, but if you're new, I'd like to hear that as well. What would you do to change the job? Would you leave it as is? Do you think that the current Summoner is actually completely fine? Which, statistics would make you the odd one out, but even so, I'd like to hear some opinions. So, with that, my name has been Serv. If you enjoy my videos and you'd like more, please don't forget to like, to comment, to subscribe. Subscriptions right now help my channel out more than you know. So, With that, I thank you kindly for watching, and I will see you next time. Fare thee well. Oh, and before I go, I stream on Twitch now. Well, I always did, but I'm back on Twitch now. You can find a link to my Twitch in the description box below. Bye-bye.